Hello. Well, this is the video that I had every intention of recording early today. Don't know why these are in, because there's nothing going through them. Yes, this is the video I intended to record early today. Now, I may have well released my first attempt at recording this video, where I had a little bit of a moment, didn't I? But anyway, I thought the original topic of this video was well worth talking about, and I think it is important. And it does come off the back of a comment I received where someone basically messaged to say, I've lost X amount over the last 12 months. You know, is this okay? Is this amount a problem? And it is, I'm not picking on that person personally, because it's only one example of quite a number of comments I've received in a similar vein. You know, when does a big loss become too much of a loss? You know, where is the line between sort of healthy gambling, which we know over time are always going to cost you money, you know, assuming there's a house edge, it's always going to cost you money. Okay, when is a certain level of loss acceptable and when is it a problem? And I think that's actually quite an important thing to address, because ultimately that is going to form a significant part of your decision as to whether or not to get into some form of recovery or to have an attempt at quitting gambling. I will very quickly acknowledge the fact that you are indeed supposed to sit on deck chairs rather than wear them, but hey, look, it's quite a snazzy shirt, even if it maybe doesn't do up quite the way it used to. So, without further ado, I hope you're keeping safe. I hope you're keeping safe. I will save the shameless self-promotion towards the end of this video, so you can at least have a little bit of a listen to my advice before I start plugging my Patreon and all that sort of stuff. All right, now, when you talk about you know, how much of a loss is too much of a loss, there's, I would say, around three things to consider. The first one, and I guess the most obvious one, is affordability, isn't it? You know, everyone's you know, financial situation is different, and therefore a loss of X amount is going to be subjective in terms of its significance to you and to your lifestyle and to your affordability and everything else. So a billionaire going and losing £1,000 in a casino is going to be a very small drop in the ocean. However, £1,000 to someone who works a minimum wage job is going to be quite a substantial portion. In fact, it may be most of their monthly income. So that is definitely something to consider. You know, the amount is sort of clearly irrelevant without knowing the background to your own personal financial circumstances, and that of course is going to be, you know, your income, your bank account, your savings, you know, and other financial factors. I have been in different situations in my life where I could have lost £1,000 and it wouldn't have mattered a jot. I've been in situations where if I lose £100, it's absolutely devastating, and that kind of brings me on to my second point. And that is how one person's affordability can vary. And I don't just mean in different stages of life. Like I say, I've had jobs that have paid me significantly more money than the one I'm doing at the moment, where, you know, a loss would have not mattered, but the same size loss sort of 5 years later, or 5 years earlier, in fact, may have been a significant blight on my own personal situation. But it actually varies far more frequently than that. Even if your income remains relatively steady, it can vary within a month, for example. You know, we all know what happens if we get paid, and sometimes when we get paid, we spend a bit more money. Now, that could be on gambling. It could be going out and buying things that you want, buying a new pair of trainers, buying some new clothes, you know, going out on a big night out with your mates. You know, and you do that once you've been paid because you have that bit of your disposable income left. But that disposable income, of course, is finite, and so you may find that at the beginning of the month, just for example, and I'm going to talk in, you know, completely arbitrary figures, because like I say, these vary between people. But if you go out and you lose £200 on payday, yeah, of course, you're going to be a bit miffed that you've lost £200 on payday, and we'll come on to the emotional side of it shortly, all right? But that you can kind of swallow because, you know, you've just been paid, that came out your disposable income, etc., etc. Now, when I'm actually recording this video, it is the last Thursday of the month, so it's dangerously close to payday for an awful lot of people. So just as a very quick aside, I will just say, if you always lose your wages on payday, then take this opportunity now to do something different this month, okay? Put some extra blocks in place. Make sure that you don't repeat the cycle that you repeat month after month. It's something I've spoken about so frequently, but it's something that I think is so important. But to go back to my original point, for me, tomorrow's payday. For a lot of people, it's going to be the last Friday of the month or the last working day of the month or whatever. All right, so it's going to be here or hereabouts. But it might be that you've got 2 or 3 days till payday and you've got 20 quid in your pocket. All right, that might be all that's left for the month. Maybe you've got plans to go for a couple of pints after work on Friday. Maybe there's no food in the cupboard and you've actually got to use that 20 quid that you've got left in your pocket to go and buy some groceries, some essentials, some bread and milk and all that sort of stuff, right? In that case, whilst losing £200 at the beginning of the month may have been irritating but acceptable and not cause you any problems, if you now go and lose that £20, that's going to cause you a whole load more hurt than a much more significant loss at the beginning of the month. So, my point is that the monetary value of a loss, how much you've lost, and people ask me all the time, what's your biggest loss? Which I will tell you in just a moment. People ask me all the time, what was your biggest loss ever? It's academic. Because ironically, my biggest loss, which I will tell you now, because otherwise I forget 2 minutes' time, was about 10 grand in a day, right? My biggest loss ever was at a time where I could reasonably afford it. I mean, can anyone ever really afford to lose 10 grand unless you're a billionaire? Probably not. But I still had a good credit rating. I had a very good job. I had other income streams, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so yes, it hurt like holy hell. All right, but if I lost a grand now, that would be far more significant. So just to put an arbitrary number, a monetary value in of itself without knowing the background in your other circumstances doesn't make any odds, all right? I think what is a bigger factor is how a loss makes you feel. Now, I know people who have gambling problems. I know how I always used to feel when I lost money, when I had a gambling problem. But I also know people who gamble recreationally. I know, I've got a good friend who plays, he's quite a wealthy chap, but he goes on the boats, he plays in casinos and all the rest of it. And he handles losses very well. And that's not just because of the affordability factors spoken before, but it's because he has understood, earmarked that money for gambling, and if he loses, he's lost. Right, and I'm sure that is the same for an awful lot of casual or recreational gamblers. They can gamble, they kind of go, bugger, I lost, wish I'd won, would have been nice, never mind, onwards and upwards, got on with the day, and it doesn't affect their long-term mentality. They're not waking up the next day, as I'm sure a lot of you, including myself, has done. You don't wake up the next day feeling like you've been punched in the stomach when you recall your loss from the day before. All right, so that, I believe, is a very significant factor. How has that loss made you feel? And I'm not going to say particularly how the loss makes you act, because as gamblers we become very good at brushing off losses in front of others, don't we? I've done it multiple times where you brush it off, and I think I've used the expression, made a whole video about the expression, it's only money, before, right? As a way to deflect from your true feelings, your true subconscious reaction to a gambling loss. How do you react to gambling in a sort of shorter to medium term? Okay, so if you have a big loss, do you, like the recreational gamblers I referred, just write it off, brush it off, get on with your day, go and do something different? Or do you feel the need to go back and chase your losses? Yes, it's a cliche, but that's very, very significant. If after you've lost, you want to get some money so you can go back and chase those losses, or, as I've spoken about, something I used to do personally all the time, after a big gambling loss, I feel the need to go and get that money back from somewhere else. Okay, that could be pawning something, selling something, borrowing money, doing whatever, all right, to replace that money that I'd lost. Even if it wasn't money that I necessarily needed to survive, to live, to pay bills, etc. All right. Obviously, if you lose money that was earmarked for your rent, yes, you're naturally going to need to go out and find a way to pay your rent. But if you've lost money that was disposable income, but yet you still find the need or feel the need to go and plug that financial gap through whatever means, or even if it means borrowing money at a high interest rate, which you're then going to pay back even more and make that hole in your finances even bigger, if you feel that need, then that's probably a bit of a sign of a problem. And ultimately, that's what all of this is about. It's all about identifying if your gambling is a problem. So simply saying, I've lost X amount, is that a problem? I cannot simply tell you unless I know so many other factors, including your personal circumstances, how you gamble, the frequency with which you gamble, which is certainly another factor, and also how your gambling makes you feel once you lose, and how you react to those emotions and those subconscious feelings of loss. Frequency, like I say, is also a factor. All right, if you're gambling daily, that is almost certainly a sign of an addiction, because whilst gambling is everywhere, the time and availability of gambling to someone who doesn't have a problem is not likely to occur on a daily basis. You're not likely to find yourself in a gambling situation on a daily basis unless you actively seek it out. Yes, it might cross your path when you're walking down the high street and there's a bookies. Yes, it's likely to cross your path if you're in the pub with your mates having a few pints and there's fruit machines in the corner. And it's likely to cross your path if you go out with friends to the casino or to a race day or something for a stag do. Gambling will cross your path at certain points in your life. But if it's crossing your path on a daily basis, then dare I say, with that frequency, you are seeking it out, consciously or subconsciously. So, ultimately, in answer to the question, how much gambling is too much gambling, how much of a loss is too big of a loss, all I can say is only you will know. And a lot of this will come down to a pure gut feeling. You will know how much of a loss is too much of a loss. All right? Even if it's a sizable financial loss, you will know whether that was a one-off, or it was just bad luck, whether you can move on from it, or whether that's going to have a significantly bigger repeating impact on your life. Trust your gut. If you feel something is wrong, then the chances are something is already very wrong. Okay, but it's never too late to address it. It's never too late to make changes, and it's never too late to undo the damage you've caused. It may take longer to undo the damage than it did to cause it, but it's not irreparable. All right, you can do it. Stay safe. Stay sane. Speak to you all soon. Take care.